One of the biggest general tips I can give you for the reading section is to be skeptical. Too many times students get hooked on one choice or the other. They get tunnel vision, they come up with all these reasons why it could be right, but then they don't ask the opposite question, which is, well, could this, or why could this be wrong? What are the points possibly against this being the answer? You always want to have that voice in your mind that's going to say, okay, I can see why this one might work, but let me also make sure there are no good reasons why it may not work. And you want to be a bit careful with this because you don't want to always second guess yourself so that you never come down to a choice, but you do just want to have that mechanism in there so that you're not just looking for reasons why a choice is right, but you're also importantly looking for reasons why choices are wrong. You've seen this throughout the entire series so far. When we go through choices, I look at the choice and say, okay, why is this one right? And also, why is this one wrong? What is wrong with this choice? How does it not fit with the passage? Is it contradicted by the passage? Is it not even relevant to the passage? Do they say nothing about this? Right? Is there a piece of the choice that just doesn't work? We always have to have that reasoning, that backup to make sure that we're eliminating choices because they're wrong for good reasons, and that we're picking choices because they're right for good reasons, and because there's nothing that speaks against them. So here's an example of what I mean by being skeptical. The author uses dwelling, dress, food, and environment as examples of what? So let's pick up on line 4. The conditions of human life have not only been changed, but revolutionized within the past few hundred years. In former days, there was little difference between the dwelling, dress, food, and environment of the chief and those of his retainers. Okay, let's go to the choices. Are these examples of things more valued in the present than in the past? Nothing in this passage, even if you read on, and I would recommend, obviously we would read on a little bit, but nothing in this passage says that these things are valued more in the present than in the past. There's no text that supports A. A is gone. How about B? The author uses dwelling, dress, food, and environment as examples of bare necessities of life. So be very, very careful. On the one hand, we might look at this and say, dwelling, that's, shelter. Clothing, it's kind of a shelter as well. Food, that's important need. Environment, okay, not quite sure how that relates. I guess, again, it's kind of like shelter or being in a comfortable place with weather or whatever. So this seems like bare necessities. Sure, these are bare necessities of life, but be very careful. Have that second opinion. Number one, is that really the answer to the question? It seems a little bit too straightforward. And more importantly, is this why the author is talking about these things? Is this the author's point? Is the author making the point, back in the day, the bare necessities of life were dwelling, dress, food, and environment? Not really. What is the author saying here? The author is saying, a few hundred years ago, back in the day, the chief and his retainers, in other words, like the king and the regular people, we'll say, had very little difference between where they lived, how they dressed, how they ate, right? They were more or less the same. And then the author's going to go on to say, well, nowadays there's quite a difference between the rich and the poor. And then goes on to talk about the consequences of that. But the author's talking about these things to say, okay, this is how we can talk about people's conditions. People have these material conditions, dwelling, dress, food, and environment. And back in the day, we were all the same, or at least we were much more equal than we are today. It's basically what he's saying. So while B may seem attractive, we're going to leave it for now. Hopefully we can find a better choice. If not, then I guess we put B, but hopefully we can find a better choice that matches more what's going on in this passage. Examples of things to which all people are entitled. Be careful in this one. You could argue that this is true, right? People should have access to food and to dress and to dwelling, but that's not what the passage says. It's all about what's being said in the passage, not about our own opinions or what's going on in real life or philosophy, generally speaking. It's about what's in the passage. Examples of possible indications of differences in status. Aha. Right? You are going to compare people, and that's what this passage is doing. You're comparing people by what they have, by what they own, by their conditions. And this is how you can tell the differences between the chief and the retainers, or the rich person and the poor person. That is the context in which these are being discussed. So luckily we did find a choice better than B. So we'll go with D and we'll get rid of B. So there you go. Be skeptical. You want to, come up with reasons why an answer is right, of course, but always ask yourself, okay, are there any reasons why this is wrong? If it looks good, then pick it. But as in this case, if you can come up with some arguments against it, you might want to look elsewhere, hopefully find a better choice. To learn more about Reason Prep's SAT, SAT subject test, and ACT video courses, go to reasonprep.com/enroll, and you can find the link in the description below the video.